الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا ومولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله تبارك وتعالى عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. قال سبحانه وتعالى إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. قال سبحانه وتعالى والسابقون السابقون أولئك المقربون. وقال سبحانه وتعالى ومن أراد الآخرة وسعى لها سعيها وهو مؤمن فأولئك كان سعيهم مشكورا. Respected elders, respected ulama, my brothers and my sisters, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. After praising the Almighty Allah and sending salutations to Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, I begin by first thanking you, my brothers and sisters of Montreal, for giving me this opportunity to convey the message of Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And I pray to the Almighty Allah that Allah accepts these efforts of yours in listening to this message, as I pray to the Almighty Allah that Allah accepts these efforts of mine in delivering this message. Not so long ago I came across an article. It was a speech delivered by Miss Carlton Fiorina. It was delivered after the 9/11 attacks. 2 weeks after this, she delivered a very daring speech, a beautiful speech. I'm going to read part of this speech to you, as I believe it will give our Iman the much needed boost. She said, there was once a civilization that was the greatest in the world. It was able to create a continental superstate that stretched from ocean to ocean and from northern climes to tropics and deserts. Within its dominion lived hundreds of millions of people of different creeds and ethnic origins. One of its languages became the universal language of much of the world, the bridge between the people of 100 lands. Its armies were made up of people of many nationalities, and its military protection allowed a degree of peace and prosperity that had never been known. The reach of this civilization's commerce extended from Latin America to China and everywhere in between. And this civilization was driven more than anything by invention. Its architects designed buildings that defied gravity. Its mathematicians created the algebra and algorithms that would enable the building of computers and the creation of encryption. Its doctors examined the human body and found new cures for diseases. Its astronomers looked into the heavens, named the stars, and paved the way for space travel and exploration. Its writers created thousands of stories. When other nations were afraid of ideas, this civilization thrived on them and kept them alive. When censors threatened to wipe out knowledge from past civilizations, this civilization kept the knowledge alive and passed it on to others. While modern Western civilization shares many of these traits, the civilization I'm talking about was the Islamic world from the year 800 to 1600. Although we are often unaware of our indebtedness to this other civilization, its gifts are very much a part of our heritage. The technology industry will not exist without the contributions of Arab mathematicians. This was Miss Carlton Fiorina, the Chief Executive Officer of Hewlett-Packard Corporation. May Allah give her hidayat and guide her. I'm sure you'd agree she's amongst the few that speaks the haqq, that speaks the truth. When Europe was in the dark ages, gloom and doom prevailed. So much so that the Europeans could not even read or even write their own names. Your forefathers, they were the torchbearers. Your forefathers were the epitomes of guidance. Your forefathers were the pioneers. Your forefathers were the leaders, world leaders, leading the whole of mankind in every aspect of life. Your forefathers excelled, and still excelled, and further excelled, so much so that they were hundreds of years ahead of their time. In the 10th century, 1100 years ago, your forefathers had products in their bathrooms and hygiene practices which could so easily compete with the products that you have in your bathroom in this day and age in the 21st century. 1100 years ago, you don't even have a wudu machine. 1100 years ago, they had wudu machines. It was mobile. It was brought in front of a guest. It appeared like a peacock in a tray. The guest would tap the head, and water would burst out in 8 short spurts. Just enough to make wudu. Compare this engineering with the sink and tap of today. In the 13th century, 800 years ago, your forefathers were making soap and they were washing their hands with soap. Again, 800 years ago, your forefathers, the likes of Al-Jazari, had made clocks of numerous clocks of different shapes and sizes. The first Big Ben is not the one that is in London today. It was built by your forefathers hundreds of years ago in Morocco, Fez in Morocco. Who introduced the concept of 3-course meals? Again, it was your forefather Abul Hassan Ali ibn Nafi'. The first coffee shop appeared in Europe in Venice, 1645. Your forefathers were drinking coffee hundreds of years before this because Khalid had discovered it as his goats grazed on the slopes of Ethiopia. Hundreds of years ago, your forefathers in the 10th century had laid the foundation of trigonometry and algebra. When it came to agriculture, the famous historian S.P. Scott, he writes that the Spanish Muslim agricultural system was the most complex, the most scientific, and the most perfect ever devised by the ingenuity of man. 1100 years ago, your forefathers were manufacturing paper, they were building dams, they were building windmills, and your forefather, Firnas, went as far as building a flying machine, the first of its kind capable of carrying a human being in the air. They were designing and building great buildings and great cities. Who can forget the earthquake-defying minarets of Sinan? Who can forget the New York of the 9th century, Qurtuba? Qurtuba was the New York of the 9th century. In the 9th century, Qurtuba had dozens of libraries. It had schools which were free.